Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala ma ba'd. So I'm going to begin with a number of disclaimers as I usually do. I want you to understand that I find it very awkward talking about detailed fiqh issues in spite of the fact that I have over 250 online Q&A. And the reason for this is because you are being asked to do something that you should not be doing. Imagine a very sick person having to go to one doctor and then another, let's just say 3 doctors. And this sick person is not a medical school graduate, he doesn't know anything about medicine, and his life is at stake. And each one of these doctors is prescribing a different medication. And this bichara miskeen, sick guy has to make a decision which medication to follow. You ask me, how is he going to do this? How is he going to make, like the doctors are trying to explain, oh, but this chemical reacts with this organ and this has this and that. And this guy who hasn't really studied all of this will basically have to do what exactly? Who can tell me? What is he going to have to do? Louder, be confident. Okay, okay, he'll have to do research, but do you really think he's qualified to do research? He will have to do research because his life is at stake. But in the end, what is he going to end up doing? Make a decision based on what? On what? Faith on what? So these are 3 doctors. Faith not in Allah, but in what exactly? Whichever he thinks is best. And how will he decide whichever he thinks is best? Realistically, there's going to be a whole interplay, including the confidence and the erudite, capability of the doctor, including his own psychological issue of, I think I've researched and I know better, etc., etc. But you do understand the fundamental problem where this poor guy is forced to make a decision and he's not qualified to make a decision. And what will end up happening is a type of, frankly, appeal to authority. I'm just going to follow the guy that I think knows the best. And this is the equivalent of you guys wandering through this debate every single time there's a debate between various opinions. And you're forced to choose between 3, 4, 5 online shuyukh, most of whom you don't actually interact with. And it is important, you have to make up your mind, but in the end of the day, you're going to have to follow those whom you trust. So recognize the illusion of you independently researching to get to the correct opinion is frankly a figment of imagination. Because just like our scenario here, now unless this guy was a medical student, in which case they have some background, in which case you can tease out, form a more educated opinion. But even then he's a medical student and there's 5 doctors in front of him. Even then there's an element of judgment, but at least there's a better recognition of the pros and cons of each opinion. If you are a madrasa student and you've studied hadith, mustalah al-hadith, fiqh, usul al-fiqh, maqasid al-sharia, lugha, dalalat al-alfaz, etc. You've studied 17 branches of Islam, then perhaps at a basic level you'll be able to understand. But if you haven't, then there is no alternative other than, Ya Allah, this is a very abstract issue. I'm just going to trust the person I think knows best, and that is fine. That is okay. That's how the world works. I'm not a specialist in medicine. I'm going to have to blindly follow the doctor I trust. And I gave this example multiple times. When COVID happened, the pros and cons, you're all old enough to remember COVID, right? Your younger siblings, they're not going to know what COVID is, but you guys lived through it. When COVID happened, we had the massive debates, and I had to make a decision, vaccinate or follow the anti-vaxxers. And I made a decision. I don't regret it. I followed vaccinate, and I vaccinated myself because the doctors I spoke to, whom I trusted, convinced me, and I followed it. That's the reality of that time. Now, bottom line, the reason I'm saying this is because that's fine to blindly follow. What I want you to be especially cognizant of is the arrogance that comes when a person blindly follows and then thinks they're qualified to debate and pass judgments on other opinions. Do you think that's a fair assessment? That if you are blindly following, if you are not a researcher, and you simply follow the authority whom you trust, at the very least humble yourself and realize, okay, I think I'm right, but I'm not really qualified to pass verdicts on those other doctors, and I'll leave their affair, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same goes over here, that what we're seeing, unfortunately, is an overly simplistic analysis on all ways. And this issue that we're going to discuss today, like most issues, and that's why people are frustrated when I give answers, because they want that simplistic kindergarten answer. Black and white, up and down, left and right, haram or halal. Guess what? In a lot of issues, it's a lot more nuanced, and this is one of them. It really is. And I'm sorry, wallah, if I wanted popularity, I'd give you the fatwa that everybody wants. It's not a simplistic fatwa. And because it's not simplistic, and because my goal is to raise the bar of education, and frankly, to build some bridges, because another problem that we have, a massive problem that we have, is that we have large segments of the ummah hostile to one another over a whole host of issues, including this one. This is a reality, a lived reality. The people that are more involved in the sciences, attending halaqat, listening to particular speakers, by and large, majority of them, not all, because there are, ulama have allowed it, but the most of them have a clear-cut understanding that anything to do with Halloween is absolutely haram. Now, that is one paradigm. Another paradigm, and I'm sure every one of you in this room right now has cousins, friends, relatives, acquaintances that inhabit the other paradigm. Another lived reality, frankly, dare I say, perhaps the majority of the actual Muslim world living in America, living in Canada. Perhaps the majority, if not a majority, definitely a large percentage, like 40% or something. A large percentage amongst them really don't see this issue as being religious and problematic, and will participate to some level. Whether it's their kids going trick-and-treating, whether it is they themselves just coming together and doing that which might be mubah, or maybe even doing that which is haram, and they know it's haram, but nobody's going to justify, alcohol or, those types of fahisha that take place. But my point is that there's a spectrum here. And many of those who might be doing what they consider to be innocent, trick-or-treating, or just have a get-together where there's no fahisha, no alcohol, no wrong taking place, but because it's a holiday, whatever, they're going to come together. And they view the religious side, the fatwa side, the clerical side as being disconnected from reality. It's not they reject the religion, it's that they reject the scholar's interpretation of this issue. And they say, just like all other issues, the Mulana class, the Imam class, they're going to call this haram. What is there haram about this, right? And frankly, this is a major problem, because when we're disconnected from the masses, when we don't have the respect of the masses, that is a problem. So I'm going to give my nuanced lecture. And the goal here is to create a little bit of bridge and empathy, to allow people to see why there are these opinions and why each side is looking at this issue from a different lens. And therefore, I will be a bit more nuanced, but I know a lot of people are looking for the simplistic verdict, and I know, especially, astaghfirullah, may Allah protect me as usual, but online, people are just waiting to get that 10-second clip, and that's it, khalas, all the videos come out, he's watering the religion now, and this and that. So for that crowd, firstly, may Allah guide you, that's not should be the niyyah, but for that crowd, I'll just say that in my humble analysis and opinion, even though this is not a simplistic verdict, without a doubt, the celebration as it exists today really should be avoided as a ritualized festival, and especially those Muslims who prioritize Allah's pleasure and who want to achieve the highest places should avoid this gray area. But those who do it out of ignorance and not understanding the realities and nuances of Islamic theology and law should not be treated harshly, and most definitely should not be judged as having committed shirk or kufr. These are massive words that might not be thrown around like kids throw candy at Halloween. The shuyukh throw kufr and haram and shirk as if there's no repercussions. These are big words. These are very dangerous words to use. And you're just going to accuse families of being guilty of shirk because they're doing in what their mind is innocent, I think that also needs to be avoided. And so bottom line, while this celebration definitely as a whole, as a ritualized celebration should be avoided, we should also avoid simplistic fatwas against innocent Muslims who don't know any better. And if we wish to guide them, it should be done with wisdom. So now that having been said, let us now take a step back and begin our deep dive. And inshallah, I hope we benefit not just about Halloween, but overall about many other issues when it comes to fiqh, when it comes to celebrations, when it comes to a lot of the controversy we see online. So I have done a bit of a research on what various scholars of our times, and I don't like mentioning names, so I'm going to leave them out today. Various scholars of our times in various schools and various madhabs and madrasas have said, and because there's only one lecture, I'll just summarize and say, I have found quite a lot of arguments for and against. Those that argue for impermissibility, I'll categorize their arguments into two large categories. Number one, those that I believe carry some weight. I'm going to discuss those in detail. And of those are three. Three arguments really do have some weight, and we should give them some attention and understand where they're coming from. Number one, the first argument. Festivals as a default are haram, and any festival that is not sanctioned by the Sharia automatically becomes a bid'ah. That's the first argument. Number two, anything that has pagan roots is haram, and so anything that has origins in paganism, origins in non-Muslim rituals becomes haram. And then number three, imitating non-Muslims is haram, tashabbuh bil kuffar. These three arguments are of the primary arguments that deserve our pause and our attention and our discussion. Other than this, the second category, are a whole host of generic arguments that frankly are very tertiary, and they don't deserve too much of our time because some of them are haram and makruh regardless of Halloween. Doesn't really matter. So we shouldn't bring them into Halloween. So for example, to say Halloween parties have alcohol in them, I mean, that's a non-issue. Any party that has alcohol would be haram, right? To say that, I mean, I even read a fatwa, believe it or not, I don't want to mention the website, that, oh, most of the candies have gelatin, so it should be prohibited. I mean, guys, really, like, this is not a core issue, so therefore don't give gelatin candy at Halloween. I mean, other issues, a wasting of money, israf. And again, that's very relative, because at some level, all of us are living large. At some level, we all splurge a bit. So yes, we should be modest and whatnot, but you don't bring this argument and make Halloween haram because of it. Or else when you go to a fancy diner, you can use the same argument there, right? So we're going to literally just ignore all of those arguments because they're not really relevant. What is haram in them is haram outside of Halloween. And what is makruh in them is makruh in our lifestyles as well. So we're not going to bring it in for Halloween. Therefore, let us now go back to the three main arguments one by one. Are you guys with me? I'm going really fast because there's so much to cover. Are you guys with me? Okay, number one, festivals are haram as a default, and celebrating anything other than the two Eids becomes a bid'ah. This is the primary fatwa, especially found in the Salafi school, almost exclusively found in that school, because it goes back to their premise, their understanding of Islam, and of course it goes back to Ibn Taymiyyah directly. Ibn Taymiyyah was very clear on this. In his opinion, there are only two festivals in Islam. Any other festival automatically becomes a religious innovation, a bid'ah. Because in his mind, in his analysis, the Sharia dictates festivals. You see, this goes back to a basic premise. When it comes to culture, the Sharia is silent and everything is permissible unless the Sharia prohibits it. And when it comes to rituals, the opposite is true. Everything is haram unless the Sharia allows it. This rule is universally agreed upon. I repeat, and I need you to memorize it, and I need you to apply it. When it comes to dealings, eating, drinking, when it comes to mu'amalat, when it comes to interaction, human interactions, the default is everything is what, guys? Permissible, unless the Sharia forbids. So if you wear a certain color, somebody says, oh, bro, that's haram. You don't need to prove. He needs to prove it's haram. The default and transaction, if you're in transacting a certain manner, the brother says it's haram, you don't need to prove it's halal. The guy needs to prove to you it's haram. So as the default, mu'amalat or halal. Rituals, on the other hand, you cannot invent a ritual. You cannot invent a new way to worship Allah. Rituals must be narrated in the Sharia. This rule is agreed upon. There's actually no two opinions about this. This is agreed upon. Now, Ibn Taymiyyah argued celebrations are rituals. Is that clear? Based on that, you then extrapolate every celebration that the Sharia doesn't come with becomes a religious innovation. And that is a valid opinion, and I respect that opinion. But I politely have my views on this, and by the way, so do pretty much all the other madhabs. So when the scholars of the madhabs generally prohibit Halloween, they generally don't use this issue of celebrations. And that's why, because in many of the modern scholars, they don't have a problem with celebrations per se unless certain conditions are met, because they don't view celebrations as being a part of the religion. Now, much can be said here, and I've given a longer lecture about this, but I will quickly summarize, and I hope inshallah this is a benefit. This is because it transcends just Halloween. My opinion is that celebrations are divided into three categories. Number one, personal, private celebrations of a non-religious nature. It's not a communal celebration. You are doing it, you're inviting family and friends. Society is not doing it. Any personal celebration that you do, Ibn Taymiyyah never talked about this, by the way. So to bring Ibn Taymiyyah here is incorrect. Ibn Taymiyyah never talked about personal celebrations. It's a quiet thing in his books. He never mentions it. Without a doubt, in my mind, the Sharia is silent about personal, private, non-religious celebrations. There's no religion. Why would the Sharia get involved as long as what you do is halal? If you graduate, you throw a party, you celebrate. If you buy a new house, you celebrate. You get a promotion, you celebrate. You literally throw a party, invite family and friends, rent out a hall, have some halal festivities, get a nasheed band to come, whatever. Why would that be haram? What bid'ah are you doing here? So personal, private celebrations, the Sharia is silent. If what happens is halal, the celebration is halal. Okay? That's, to me, very clear. Now, the other group would argue, but maybe that's okay, but if you make it annually, then it becomes a bid'ah. So birthdays will become a bid'ah. And the response says who? Where did you get this from? Once it becomes an annual, you can say that birthdays, I don't think they should be done because whatever, you can bring some of the tertiary issues. It's a waste of time, a waste of money, israf. That doesn't make something haram. Going to a fancy restaurant is a type of israf if you want to argue that point. You can say, if you want to, you believe so, it's childish. Your personal opinion about being childish doesn't make it haram in the Sharia. We have to be very precise here, right? So, personal celebrations, the Sharia is silent about. The second category, communal festivities. Ibn Taymiyyah argued communal festivities that are not sanctioned by Islam become a bid'ah because the only communal celebrations are the two Eids. That's what he argued. The first category he didn't even talk about. So in my opinion, the Salafis are wrong in the first place for quoting Ibn Taymiyyah for category one. That's my opinion. Obviously, they don't care about my opinion, but that's besides the point. So the communal celebrations. Now, an example would be national holiday, Mother's Day, where the government would say, in some cities, in some countries, let's just say, this is a government celebration. Everybody should be off on this day. You should just celebrate this issue. Yes, I agree. Ibn Taymiyyah argued that is a bid'ah. I agree. That's what he said. Is it a bid'ah though? That goes back to the issue. Do you consider celebrations to be ritual, or do you consider communal celebrations to be culture? Those who said it's culture, and this is generally speaking, now within the madhab-based groups you have various opinions, but I would say the default of the madhab-based groups is that celebrations that are non-religious are cultural. So the religion doesn't have anything to do with them. You can't call it a bid'ah. And if you look at the fatwas of the grand muftis of Egypt, of Jordan, of Libya, if you look at their fatwas, generally speaking, they're on this methodology, where they're not endorsing, they're not like saying this is very important, but at the same time, they're like, yeah, well, this isn't nothing to do with the religion. It's not a religious thing. If you guys want to do it, right? And I'm very sympathetic to that. Religious folks should not be publicizing and taking the non-Eid festivities as the primary festivities. That's not, I agree with that. We don't want to lose the sanctity of the two Eids. But to say that a national day is haram according to Islam, I mean, that's a very big statement. And I don't find the Sharia would come with that. Nonetheless, Ibn Taymiyyah argues because the Prophet came to Medina and they had two festivals, and he said to them, oh, Allah has given you two better festivals, right? And this is a valid hadith. And the response is, for a bit of an usul al-fiqh here, the fact that the Prophet said Allah has given you two better festivals, the max you can extrapolate from this, the max is that it is makruh to have communal festivals as a polity, as a society. You cannot extrapolate haram, much less bid'ah. From the hadith, the max you can say, it's best to avoid it. And I actually am sympathetic to this. Religious scholars, clergy, should not be at the forefront of encouraging the festivals that are not of the religion. I actually agree with this, but encouraging versus seeing and participating are two different things. So, 4th of July is a classic example. We're living in this country, there is the 4th of July, everybody's off on that day. Blunt question, does Islam tell you that you are sinful? It's a bid'ah. It is haram for you to invite your family and friends in your backyard and have a barbecue? I know it's sarcastic, but I'm literally asking you that that's exactly what 4th of celebrate. Is it haram for you to take your kids to watch the fireworks on the 4th of July? These are realistic manifestations of saying celebrations, all of it is haram. And of course, I respect those people and families and scholars who have that view. But I do say that they should think long term, and if they make the religion extra difficult when Allah didn't make it difficult, the problem comes when you make the halal haram, you will trivialize the actual haram. And not everybody will be able to live up to your standard. And when you promote a type of Islam that is so ultra conservative and strict, and your teenager grows up and that's his or her version of Islam, you have to worry, will they be able to maintain that, or will they reject everything because you weren't wise in how you dealt with your religiosity? As I said, this goes back to my lecture on fanaticism. Listen to that. And I don't want to call this view fanatical. I understand and respect it, but there are certain positions that you have to ask, what is the benefit in the long run? And I am of this opinion as well. You're going to tell, and I know families that are like this. On the 4th of July, they will keep their kids inside the house and close the curtains even as they hear the fireworks. And they will tell their kids it is haram to watch the fireworks. Now you tell me, a 5-year-old kid, you tell me how that kid is going to grow up, and what is the percentage that kid is going to grow up respecting the version of Islam that their parents follow, right? How will they feel as soon as they discover quote-unquote freedom? So I am not a fan of that view, but I understand where it's coming from. And by the way, even for the record, again, the more you study, the more tolerant you become. It's so easy to say haram, kufr, shirk. It's the easiest thing in the world. But the more you study, the more open-minded and tolerant you become. You find so many narrations from the scholars of the past, from the Sahaba and Tabi'un, that they were far more open-minded than many of the modern people here. Ali radiallahu an, and Ali is Ali. I mean, I don't need to tell you who Ali is. Ali radiallahu an, as the ruler in Kufa, and Kufa was majority non-Muslim. Kufa, remember, early Islam, the majority of people in these regions are non-Muslim. And there were a lot of Zoroastrians in Kufa at the time, because that was the default of large segments of that population. And the Zoroastrians have a festival called Nowruz. They still have it to this day. Nowruz, Iranians still have it to this day. Zoroastrians had Nowruz. And on the day of Nowruz, it is reported in the Musannaf, one of the books of Athar, the Zoroastrian delegation came to the palace, or not, shouldn't call it the palace, but the court where Ali radiallahu anh, and he gave him gifts, and they gave him something. I'm not making this up. Desis, pay attention. They gave him something that is called in our books faludhaj. It's literally there, faludhaj. Now, obviously, our faludhaj is obviously developed from their one, but it is a mixture of cold and syrup and sharbat, whatever it might be, whatever it was back then, right? And they gave him this concoction. Ali radiallahu anh ate the faludhaj, and I'm definitely a follower of Ali radiallahu anh in this regard, and because I'm a big fan of ice cream, that was a joke there. And he said, "What is this for?" And they said, "Today is our Nowruz." So he said, "May every day be a Nowruz." Like, if you're going to bring me this every single day, may every day be a Nowruz. Now, this is Ali radiallahu anh. Are you going to accuse him of shirk and kufr? Are you going to accuse him of not understanding the Sharia? Nowruz is a pagan festival. Nowruz is a festival of the Zoroastrians. Did he participate if he ate ice cream? Yes or no? No. Did he go to a temple? Did he bow his head? Did he invoke a false god? No. So guys, chill. I mean, seriously. Those who claim to follow the Salaf, read the athar of the Salaf. Really. I mean, be a little bit more understanding and know, okay, a great scholar said it's haram. I respect that scholar greatly. But you know what? That's one opinion. And think about the repercussions of putting your kid and shutting the whatnot, and save it for what is needed. Save it for when you really do need to teach your kid that is actually haram versus something that is a gray area. So the second type of festivities are generic, secular, non-religious festivities like the 4th of July. And in my estimation, the max you can say, and I agree with this, the religious folks should not be encouraging of it. But it's not haram. It's not bid'ah, because bid'ah means you're expecting Allah to reward you. And you're not expecting Allah to reward you for these festivities, right? So it's not a bid'ah. And I disagree with Ibn Taymiyyah that festivities are dictated by the religion. That is the ikhtilaf here. Festivities are cultural. That's what I say. Festivities are like language and clothing and whatnot. And so their culture, the Sharia, hasn't come as a default. The third type of festivities are religious festivities. So festivities are three types. Number one, what is number one? Quickly. Personal celebrations. The Sharia is silent. Number two, communal celebrations. I think a fair argument can be made. It's definitely better as communities. So, for example, the masjid, right, should not be, making a very big deal about non-Eid celebrations. This is the role of the masjid is to prioritize the deen. We have to make our festivals. We have to make our children, extra happy. And I guess ideally, in a perfect, utopic, Islamic world and society, maybe the government should only have 2 Eids. But even then, which country in the world only has 2 days off? None. Every single Muslim country has a national day. Every single Muslim country has multiple days off. And to say that Islam makes this haram and bid'ah, I think this is a bit too strict. So max you can say, it's best to avoid as a community, especially the scholars, to make it a big deal. But participating by eating ice cream, right? By having barbecues because everybody's off. There's nothing wrong with that because you're not endorsing, you're not doing anything else. It's just taking advantage of what is going on. And then the third type of festivals are uniquely religious holy days, holidays, such as Diwali, such as Christmas. Diwali is a celebration of Hinduism. Christmas is a celebration allegedly of the birth of Jesus and whatnot. This is a uniquely religious festival. There is no question that the Muslim does not celebrate the holy days of other religions. There are no two opinions about this. Any religious festival is not celebrated in the household of a Muslim. Now, again, nuance here. As we explained in the second point, celebration means you endorse it, you go out, you do this. Now, a convert whose entire family is gathering together on Christmas, for that convert to go to their family, and basically that's the only time of the year they will meet their uncles and aunts and cousins and relatives, and show them that he or she is a Muslim, and talk about Islam organically. How can that be celebrating? Yes, if the family is very religious and they come together and there's some dua to Jesus and they have a prayer to God the Father, whatever, yes, the Muslim or Muslimah should not participate in a ritual to other than Allah. Agreed. But being a part of a family gathering when you're the convert and your whole family is a non-Muslim, this is not you celebrating Christmas. You're going for the sake of being a Muslim when your family is there. Make your niyyah for that reason and go and be a part of the family gathering. But yes, if there are rituals, you should not participate. So that is the first issue, that celebrations as a default are actually halal. Therefore, this issue does not have that strong of an argument. Okay, we're going to come back to the issue of religious in a while. The second issue, pagan origins. The second issue that is raised, oh, but Halloween is not like 4th of July. Halloween is not like 4th of July. Halloween is something that emanates from paganism. Okay, clear, excellent point. Without a doubt, any custom, any ritual, any cultural manifestation that is associated with paganism and is done by members of a religion as a mark of that religion are absolutely haram. There's no two opinions about this. So many Hindus wear, the red dot. That is a mark of certain sects and types of Hinduism. We as Muslims can never do that. Buddhists have a particular garb and monk, only Buddhists wear that. We're not allowed to wear that because that's a mark of a Buddhist. And so on and so forth. Anything that is clearly associated with paganism cannot be done by Muslims. What if it used to be associated with paganism, but it is no longer associated at a mass level with paganism? That is what we're dealing with when it comes to Halloween. In other words, does the origin matter, or does the current status quo matter? Is that clear? Response: what matters is the current status quo and not the origins. And the reason for this is because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are judged by intentions. So when there is a universal understanding that the only people that wear the red dot are those that are venerating or associating with Hinduism, then the cultural understanding here would be that because that is associated with Hinduism, it must be avoided. But if that cultural understanding is gone and nobody knows of the past, and I'll give you plenty of examples. The most obvious ones that we still operate to this day, the ancient Romans were the ones who instituted the names of our days and our months. And every single one of them was done in commemoration of and veneration to different gods. You can look this up. It's on Wikipedia. And Wikipedia, as you know, as college students, is always right? So, Monday, the moon god. Sunday, the sun god, right? Thursday, from Thor. Wednesday, from Odin, literally. Wednesday, Odin, Wednesday. So on and so forth. The names of the months as well. Jupiter has July. And forgot what is Saturn, whatever. Each one of them, like the names of the months are literally coming from the Roman gods. The origins of the names of the days and the names of the months in the English language, as currently used by all of us, have pagan roots explicitly. They literally wanted to venerate the gods, so they named the days and the months after the gods. Simple question. Is it haram to say today is Tuesday and we're in the month of October? I mean, honestly, because we have to be consistent. If you're going to say that the origins play a role, then be consistent and never say today is Tuesday or else you're committing shirk. I'm sorry, but again, I'm asking you to think. We have to move beyond emotion here. But that's not the only example. I mean, there are a ton of examples because that's how culture works, guys. That's how culture works, right? Where does even one begin? The Olympics. The Olympics. Every Muslim country in the world participates in the Olympics. Every single Muslim country. Who can tell me what the origin of the Olympics was? Well, yes, Greece, but what was the purpose of it? To venerate the Greek gods. The entire festivities from beginning to end were meant to venerate the Olympian gods. That's the purpose of the Olympics. Is it haram to Muslim countries to participate or to watch the Olympics? Nobody knows. This is gone. It's forgotten. Your Nike shoes that you're wearing. The guy who made that, swoosh symbol, whatnot, he took the god, of speed or war, whatever he wanted to replicate that. I see the Nike right there. Is it haram to wear Nike? I mean, by the way, the fatwa is there by some scholars, and I don't want to mock it. They're pious people, and I respect their piety, but you understand why some groups believe some scholars are disconnected from reality. You understand. When you give these types of fatwas, that world of piety at some level really is disconnected from the world of lived Islam. And I don't want that divide to increase, right? So, what else can we say? The Desi is in the audience. Sisters, ready for this? Ready, sisters? Desi sisters. Where does your Mehndi come from? What is the origin of the Mehndi? Who can tell me? Yes, exactly. Hinduism. Through and through. 100% straight from Hinduism. In fact, the whole yellow coloring and whatnot, dyeing, whatnot, it's straight from Hinduism. The whole rituals and culture, that's why in Hindu, Indian culture to this day, there is a festival that is a religious festival that is the Mehndi. I don't think they call it that, but it's basically the same thing. And the Muslims of India, when they embraced Islam, so the Pakistani, Bengali, Indian Muslims, all of them have the Mehndi ritual to this day. Well, it's not a ritual, it's a celebration, right? So you can breathe a sigh of relief. Is it halal or haram, sisters? See, there's unanimous consensus. Brothers, sorry, but I didn't say the brothers have to pay for it. So that's a different issue. I'm not going to get involved. When you guys get married, you decide who's going to pay for what. As long as halal takes place in the Mehndi, yes, now somebody's going to come and say, oh, but there's haram that takes place. What did we just say? Tertiary issues, don't bring them in. If you're going to drink alcohol, don't bring in Mehndi. It's haram anyway, right? So if there's going to be fahisha, don't bring in them. It's haram anyway. So you can do a Mehndi without dancing between the genders, without haram issues like this. Yes, okay, so then if we want to do that, is it haram for the sisters to have a Mehndi event before the wedding? Every single religious family pretty much, there are some that say haram, but by and large they do that, even though the origin is palpably, recognizably Hindu. It's halal. Because why is it halal? Because the Muslims, when they do it, have absolutely no indication. The cultural connotations have gone for it to be religious. Who cares what the origins were? It's now practiced in a way that is devoid of religion, right? And again, there are so many other examples that can be given as well. Even the rings that we give when we get married, right? These are actually, you think they're Christian. No, actually they're pagan. They go back to, I believe they go back to ancient Egypt, believe it or not. I think there's like some holy ring or something that would be the ring of light, something like that. And then Christianity added a bit of a Christian motif, the third finger, the ring finger, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, right? But even Christians have lost track of that theology. I don't think anybody wears a ring for that religious reason anymore. It's gone. And this culture has been absorbed around the world. Muslims around the world. Muslims of Middle East, Muslims of India, Pakistan, Muslims here. They're all giving rings when they get married. Wedding rings, engagement rings, whatever. And again, the Sharia is not dictating these things, even if the origin was pagan, right? Because nobody has that notion when they're practiced anymore. So bottom line, again, the same applies to yoga as well, by the way. So again, yoga is a controversial issue. Multiple scholars have said haram. And I, again, respect that. Because if you actually go to a Hindu temple, old school, like authentic Orthodox Hindu temple, yoga is an actual mechanism of ritual worship. It is their version of salah. I'm not exaggerating. That's like one of the paths to moksha, to nirvana, basically. That was a mixing and matching of religions done on purpose, because you know what nirvana is. One of the paths to achieve salvation is yoga. And so the priests, the pundits, they're supposed to be in those postures for lengthy periods of time as an act of worship. Now, when the first people from this land went to India when the hippie movement was going on, and they really liked what they saw, and they brought it back to California, right? And they started their yoga centers in the 60s. They basically started it as a fad, as a left-wing, liberal fad, devoid of any Hinduism. And then it became just stretching your limbs and just, having some exercise. And the way that yoga is currently by and large practiced in North America, there's no ritual at all. It's literally just bending and making your muscles more flexible, right? Therefore, the fatwa will be based upon the context, in which case, listen to me carefully, I actually believe yoga should not be allowed for people living in India who are Muslim. Because in that culture, everybody associates yoga with Hinduism. Whereas here in America, nobody by and large associates with it. That's gone. So if you join a yoga class in your gym, nobody even knows that this is a Hindu ritual. So this is a context-based fatwa. And you see here the pagan roots in India still play a role because it's still paganism. Whereas in America, where they resurrected it, reshaped it, rejuvenated it, completely disconnected, that fatwa cannot apply in America. And you cannot say that the yoga clubs here, if her sister goes to a sisters only yoga in the local gym, that she's doing shirk and bid'ah. There's nothing there. It's completely mubah, right? So pagan roots only play a role if the concept of paganism is still associated with that idea and concept. And so question arises then, this is the key question: is Halloween genuinely associated with paganism? Just like is yoga associated with Hindu paganism? The response is clear when it comes to yoga. How about Halloween? This is where I argue there is a bit of a gray area in that. Now here I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but what is Halloween? Very quickly, Halloween goes back to a ancient Irish Celtic paganistic festival called Samhain. Samhain is spelled Samhain, S-A-M-H-I-A-I-N, S-A-M-H-A-I-N, but it's pronounced Samhain. And Samhain literally means summer's end, and it was celebrated at the very end of the summer, hence October 31st, continuing on to November 1st. And the goal was to mark the end of the harvest year, the end of the agricultural year. And just as a festivities, this is pre-Christianity, cattle were brought in from the pastures, the very last harvest was gathered, and the feeling was that today is the end of the summer, it is also the beginning of the winter, it is therefore the boundary between the living and the dead. This is, the boundary is thinnest, and perhaps the dead and us can potentially interact. By the way, they did not dress up as ghouls and witches and demons in the ancient tradition. This is, I'm going to come to this, this was a modern festivity. In those times it wasn't anything, it was a genuine ritual that had some festivities to it in the ancient religions of old. When Christianity came to Ireland, they changed this festival and they called it All Saints' Eve or All Hallows' Eve. And All Hallows' Eve became Halloween. Okay? So when Christianity came, they changed the Samhain festival and they made it Christianized by remembering death and remembering those that have passed on. And folk customs persisted. The church bells would go on. They would go to church and they would make prayers on behalf of the deceased, prayers for the deceased, so that their souls are blessed. And this festival was brought by the Irish to America in the 1800s, in the 19th century. And in that iteration, that is when the children began dressing up in different ways and garbs, and that is when pumpkins began to be carved out. I mean, the ancient Irish did not have pumpkins to draw those lanterns, right? Just imagine, I mean, this is all being reinvented in America, and there was no paganism associated with the pumpkin, because these are Christians now doing this. And in fact, we have plenty of evidence to indicate in the early part of this century, 100 years ago, even though this cultural practice was primarily Irish, non-Irish people began to take it. Why? Firstly, as an excuse to party, anything to party. And secondly, there is evidence to indicate that one of the main reasons they did this was to make this a family event where the young kids would be away from doing things they shouldn't do and be involved in their local communities, just going house to house. It was actually done, believe it or not, for kind of family reasons. Like, let the youth and the teenagers not go and do other things. Let's just get them excited to do something, within the neighborhood. Something more tamer, something within our eyes. And this is when capitalism comes involved, right? And large corporations realize they can benefit. Which corporations do you think those were? Which industries? Very good. The candy industry. What else? Coca-Cola. Maybe. Okay, very good. Costume. Very good. Absolutely correct. The costume industry and Hollywood made it an excuse to make films. So the whole notion of the modern construct of Halloween is actually not going back to Samhain 2,000 years ago. It's actually a very capitalistic, modern reinterpretation done primarily in America, and then of course via Hollywood and other spread around the world. And it was marketed by the candy industry, giving discounts, making different treats. They're one of the main catalysts for Halloween, right? Frankly, and I'm not trying to justify anything, I'm just being factual here, Nestle has more to do with Halloween than the ancient demons of Norse culture. Frankly, right? M&Ms have more dhulm to Halloween. They've done more dhulm to our kids, right? Than the ancient Nordic and Celtic gods. And I'm being semi-facetious, but that's actually true. So my point is that this notion of obsessing over origins and whatnot, there's an element of truth, and I get it. But factually speaking, this 2,000-year linkage that you're trying to make is only existing in your minds. It doesn't, even the people that do it don't even know, they don't even care. It wasn't done by those people. Now you're going to say, I know some people say, but the Druids still do it. The witches still do it, right? Have you heard of the Wiccas? The Druids? They're just some paganistic, modern cult and whatnot. You're correct. The Wiccans actually do celebrate Samhain. But guess what? The irony of ironies. They took it from Halloween to resurrect the ancient pagan festival. It's not as if a group of people continue celebrating Samhain for 2,000 years, right? There's a modern, fringe movements. They claim to be witches and demons and druids and whatnot. And so they actually do go to the woods and forests and, brew cauldrons and, do they throw a newt's eye and a frog's liver? I don't know what they do, but you get my point. So your critic is going to say, but there's actually people that do it. And the response is, the very people you're talking about, they're less than 0.01% of this society, literally 0.01% or less. And number two, ironically, of the irony of ironies, they didn't take it from the ancient, Nordic and Celtic religion. They actually took it from Halloween and they resurrected a pagan festival based upon that, right? Modern day Halloween. Now, does this mean therefore that Halloween becomes totally innocent? And the response is, I would say, this is where there are certain theological issues that still remain in popular culture, such that we cannot equate Halloween with the 4th of July. And this is why I argue Halloween remains ambiguous at best, if not more, because it is still associated with demons and demonology. It is still associated with the world of the unseen and evil spirits in the world of the unseen. And that's why every single October, all social media starts talking about demons and ghosts, and all of your entertainment channels start doing the classics, Friday on 13th Street or whatever it might be, and Poltergeist and all of these weird movies and whatever comes out. Why? Because in popular culture, there is still an association with demons and with evil entities on this date. Now, is that association strong enough to use the word haram? I understand the argument, and I respect it. Me personally, I use the word haram very sparingly because it's a very big word. And so I would be much more comfortable saying it is makruh. We should avoid it because of this, actively participating, especially as adults. Because of this ambiguity, that this festival is not as neutral as 4th of July. It's not as neutral even as Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving, yes, there's a whiff of, yes, the early Christians thanked God or whatever, but there's no ritual to worship another God. And that's why the day of Thanksgiving varies from country to country. It's not a religious festival as much as it is a secular, non-religious festival. And that's why Thanksgiving really is done by pretty much all Americans, whereas Jewish Americans do not celebrate Christmas. Jewish Americans, by and large. Now, the argument can be made, Christmas is heading towards a secular holiday. And the response is, yes, just like ancient paganistic traditions slowly became secular, Christmas is also in that route. And maybe 100 years from now, Christmas will be completely secular. And when that happens, we will pronounce a verdict on it based upon that context. But right now, it is not that case. And right now, by and large, generally speaking, non-Christians do not celebrate Christmas, the way that Christians do. And I know this is an ambiguous area because change is happening, right? I see this, we see this all. You realize, because this fatwa is culture-based, there are intermediate stages where it will be difficult. So bottom line, the second issue does make Halloween a little bit awkward. The third and final issue, what was the third issue, guys? Unless you remembers, you've forgotten it all. I said there are 3 issues that make Halloween, you can talk about them. The first was festivals, and we talked about. The second issue was pagan origins. Okay. The third is what? Imitating non-Muslims. Okay. Tashabbuh bil kuffar. Tashabbuh bil kuffar. And again, each one of these topics I've spoken about a lot and at length. And again, the simplistic fatwas, imitating the kuffar is haram. And again, those who spout these views, just tease out from them what exactly do they mean. What language are you speaking? Did your great-grandfather speak English? Is that imitating the kuffar? What clothes are you wearing? What fabric are you wearing? That fabric that you wear, did any of your ancestors wear it? Sorry to be a bit crude here. We're all wearing undergarments. I hope we are. Wearing undergarments was not done by our ancestors. I'm just sorry to be crude, but that's just a reality. Okay? Is that imitating the kuffar? I mean, it's facetious, I know. Sarcastic, I know, but it's meant to draw the point home. What do you mean imitating the kuffar? Yani, what exactly makes something to be haram if it is done by a non-Muslim? They breathe also. Is that haram as well? Obviously, they're going to say no. They're going to say, of course not. It has to be something cultural. Okay. I like a halal, juicy burger and French fries. Is that imitating the kuffar? My grandfather never ate a burger and fries. My grandfather never ate a burger and fries. I love burger and fries. Is that imitating the kuffar? They're going to say, food is exempt. Language is exempt. Clothing is exempt. Pause here, push back. In the 1800s, in India and in Egypt, when the colonizers came and they colonized our ancestors, I say our meaning I'm Indian, Pakistani, and you Egyptians as well, the scholars almost unanimously said, it is haram to abandon your language and learn English. You should not learn English. It is haram to wear coat and pant. It is haram. Back in that day, all the men wore a cap. You know that, right? They wore that hat, right? It is haram to wear a cap. This was the universal fatwa pretty much around the world. And had I been alive in 1840 British India, I would have been at the forefront of making it haram as well. Why should we dress like our colonizers? Why should we abandon our culture and take the culture of the people that have pillaged and raped and plundered all of us? Why should we? But the same people, and that's why, by the way, we should know this, the Indians should know this. When Sir Sayyid Ahmed Khan opened Aligarh University to teach in English and to teach the works of Charles Dickens and the works of the West to a Muslim audience, and he wore a suit, the ulama made fatwa that he's a kafir. Because why? Angrez ban gaya. He became British. Even though Aligarh was meant to teach Muslims, they would break for salah, they taught Urdu and Farsi poetry, they taught the Quran, but he wanted Muslims to be educated so that they can better the system and rise up and intellectually at least one up the British. But the ulama didn't want that, because in their minds, identity was linked to clothing, culture, etc., etc. So those that say, oh, culture is exempt, I'm sorry, your own predecessors in this realm did not agree with you. But because you're speaking English, you want to exempt it. Because you're dressing, you want to exempt it. The reality is, this is a multifaceted, difficult topic. And tashabbu bil kuffar means you're going out of your way to do something that characterizes a civilization of kufr that is not your civilization. Tashabbuh, if you know your Arabic, tafa'ul, you made an effort to imitate. And another word is tashabuh, which is correlation. Tashabbuh, again this is Arabic here, you are making an effort to imitate. Tashabuh, it just so happens you're doing the same thing. There's a difference between correlation and between wanting to imitate. And the simplest example for this is the Prophet ﷺ dressed and spoke and talked and walked and lived like the pagans of his time. And yet he also said, whoever imitates a people is one of them. Did he dress differently? Like I gave this example so many times. If you were to magically hover over the battle of Badr and you had Abu Jahl on one side and you had the Muslims and the Prophet on the other side, you would not be able to tell them apart by their language, by how they dressed, by what they walked and talked. So the same person who said whoever imitates is one of them is the one who dressed like his own people. And he's right. He is an Arab. Why should he dress differently than an Arab? So for us here in America, we are not imitating a foreign civilization. This is our culture. We are here. And we are not going out of our way to imitate another. Just like the process of not going out of his way, he is an Arab. He dresses like an Arab. And he speaks like an Arab. And his cuisine, just so when the exotic dish came of the dab, the desert lizard, he did not like it because in his subculture, this was an exotic item. He didn't like it because it's not from the taste of my people. And Khalid ibn al-Walid said, is it haram? No, the Sharia is not saying this is haram. This is culture. And my culture is like not good. I don't like this. See, he differentiated between culture and Sharia. So when you say imitating the kuffars, right? What exactly qualifies imitation? Anything and everything? Or something that is characteristic of kufr and is not a part of your civilization? So when you look at it that way, then, and again, there's so many examples here. The Prophet himself is taking things from the kuffar, from non-Muslims. When he's going to send a letter to Heraclius, he was told, it is the custom of those peoples that they will not receive a letter unless it has a wax seal on it. Did he say, I'm sorry, this is the imitation of the kuffar, I cannot do this? No, he ordered a ring to be made, and that was the ring that he had because of this, and he put the wax seal on it. When Salman al-Farisi said, oh, in my culture, in my custom, we dug a trench. What did he say? Those are the kuffar? No. Okay, that makes sense. Technology. Let's take it in. Bring it in. What's the problem there? The daughter of the Prophet Fatima binti Muhammad, one day she complained in her circle of gathering of women. She complained about how when a woman passes away, her corpse is, of course, obviously you wrap the corpse up. She said, how is this that, her body is tightly wrapped and she's being put in the grave and the men are doing this? How can, I don't like this, And Asma binti Umays said, you know what I saw when I was in Abyssinia? They have a culture where when a woman dies, they take date palm leaves, the massive date palm leaves, right? And they basically wet it and cover it, and they cover her corpse with that when they lower her. She said, what a great idea this is. When I die, oh Asma, I want you to do this to my body. And the culture began from there in Sharia. You guys haven't attended many janazas, you should. When a woman is buried, to this day this is done. That a sheet is put over and her mahrams go in and her mahrams take the corpse and put it in so nobody sees the outer body, right? Where did this come from? Abyssinia, Habasha, ritual from them. And it came in. Is this imitating the kuffar? Again, we have to be a little bit more pedantic and push back here that not everything constitutes imitation. But then our opponent says celebrations are imitation. And this goes back to point number one. What is point number one? Are celebrations adat or are celebrations ibadah? Remember that point, right? That's point number one. So according to that paradigm, Ibn Taymiyyah and his followers, and that's a valid paradigm, they say by default, communal celebrations are rituals. And that is an opinion, I respect it, but realize that is an opinion. Frankly, it is a minority opinion. The vast majority say non-religious celebrations are like language, like cuisine, like culture. They're not, the Sharia hasn't come with them. Non-religious, basically not, Now, question is Halloween religious? And I said, it goes back to point number two. No religion takes Halloween as a religious festival. No religion takes Halloween as a religious festival. They don't. There's no group out there, as I said, the one group you can say, the Wiccans and the Druids and whatnot, ironically, they tapped into modern Halloween and they put it back there. So it's a circular argument. It doesn't work that way. No religion. And even if you find one person in the world that does it, we base a verdict based upon what is the norm, not based upon the exception. As a rule, Halloween is not a religious festival. There's no deity that is venerated. There's no exclusivity of a religious faith. But I go back to my second point. Because in particular, Halloween deals with the realm of demons and the realm of the dead, you cannot equate it to a festival that has no otherworldliness to it. And that is why, primarily based upon that, I say, without a doubt, one should avoid actively engaging in Halloween because of this. But to use the word shirk or kufr, there's no basis for this. We're just throwing it around easier than candy on Halloween. It doesn't work that way. Where is shirk and kufr? Nobody in the world does Halloween because of ibadah. Nobody. Not the kids, not the parents. The people that are doing it have no ibadah in their minds. Where's the shirk and kufr? Which gods are they worshipping? You want to go back all the way to the past, then don't say Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday. You got my point here, right? So shirk and kufr just doesn't come in. To say haram, I get it, but it's a very big word, and I personally would just say one should avoid it. But then the other question comes, what do you do with those innocent Muslims who don't have any idea that Halloween has all of this stuff? Because again, for them, it's literally just the kids are happy, they dress up, they go get some candy, right? And the parents have no nuance of usul al-fiqh and whatnot. That's why I said, when it comes to that group of Muslims, empathize where they're coming from. Inshallah, Allah will forgive their ignorance, but they should not be encouraged. So don't be judgmental, don't be harsh, but neither should they be encouraged. You should work to minimize this particular festival because it's not neutral. There are elements that deal with otherworldliness, and so even if the kid dresses up like his favorite, cartoon character, because again, another issue comes, and that maybe in 10, 20 years, Halloween will cease having any otherworldliness. It's just going to be cartoon characters. Because as it is, from what I understand, the majority of kids don't dress up like demons and ghouls and jinns. They dress up as what? They dress up as their cartoon characters, right? Had Halloween from the beginning just been cartoons, we could have had a different verdict. Had Halloween just been a children's play, we could have had a different verdict. But because there's just that whiff of otherworldliness, we cannot have the same verdict as we do for others. And so I would say, as a default, we should work to encourage Muslims to rise up above this. But if you know of a family that's semi-practicing, you know how it goes, generally speaking, they are praying, they love Allah and His Messenger, and they don't view this as the biggest deal. Work with them so that they're praying 5 times a day, they understand religiosity. Be wise in your priorities. If they're not praying 5 times a day, don't just jump up and down and say haram, kufr and shirk when it comes to Halloween. They have far bigger issues to worry about, right? Work with them to bring them closer to the religion, and inshallah they'll be forgiven for this innocent ignorance, because it's not inherently kufr and shirk. And then the final point, then we'll open up the floor for Q&A inshallah. So this is my overall verdict on us actively participating